Okay, perfect. We'll get things started off. So good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining today's session. It's going to be obviously myself and Sam from Nviron. Wavenet and Nviron are running this session on Microsoft Teams telephony, in particular for the education sector. Before we sort of kick things off, just a few sort of things about the webinar. So this is a recorded webinar as well. So if you can't stay for the whole thing or you do need access to it later, we will be able to send those out for you. There is also a live Q&A tab, so you are welcome to drop questions in as we go through. We'll either save them to the end, or if it's relevant to what we're discussing at the time, we can answer those questions as we go. So please feel free to drop questions into the chat box, and we'll run through those as we go. Before I introduce myself, I'm going to actually just hand you guys over to Sam, who's just going to give a brief introduction to himself and a little bit about Nviron, and then I'll take over. So over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Mike. Much appreciated. So yeah, just to introduce myself. I'm Sam Halsey, new business manager at Nviron. Nviron is a UK-wide infrastructure specialist, and our core value is to build and maintain trust with customers, colleagues, and partners. This ethos has allowed us to grow over the last 30 years since our incorporation, keeping many customers over that time and building extremely close ties with the largest and most successful IT vendors around the world. Although we work with all sectors in the UK, we do actually have a keen focus on the education sector, and we understand how schools, colleges and universities work, and we work closely with the IT teams in those institutions, and basically just to ultimately help improve the learning environment. Nviron have worked with Wavenet for many years, and we ourselves employ the Wavenet unified telecommunications technology in our back-end systems. Our service desk actually is, obviously despite its backup systems, is running this technology, and it's been very robust. So yeah, over to you, Mike, to introduce yourself, and yeah, to carry on talking about Wavenet and the unified technology.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Sam. So yeah, good morning, everybody. So my name's Mike Korkidakis, and I am the channel manager here at Wavenet. So my role within Wavenet is to work with sort of key, in particular, sort of MSPs and Microsoft-based partners like Nviron, to obviously assist them in deploying, in particular, the Teams telephony product. So my personal background is I've been in the UC space for about 15 plus years, spanning across 3 countries with a particular sort of specialist set over the most recent years in the UCaaS space, which is Unified Communications as a Service, and in particular the Microsoft telephony space. So from communicator to sort of, Link to Skype for Business to now the transition to Teams and where we are today. So that's a bit about myself. You'll see on the left a bit of an agenda. So some of the things we want to sort of cover off today is going to be talking about, in particular, a little bit of background on Teams and some of the things. So I have a few slides I'll go through before I cover off some of the stuff on the agenda. But we do want to sort of cover off a lot of the sort of back-end Teams telephony elements of the product and some of the differentiators between our core product and versus getting it with Microsoft directly, and obviously how that benefits you and how everything works. So we'll start with that. So if I just give a quick sort of background on Wavenet as an organization, as Sam said, Nviron and Wavenet have worked together for many years. Wavenet as an organization has been around for 2 decades, 20 plus years in the space. Where I came from was back in January. Wavenet acquired a company called Via. Via specialized specifically in just Microsoft telephony. So Wavenet acquired us in January, and that's where I came from. And our core focus was working in partnership with Microsoft and building our platform in conjunction with that and specializing purely in that space. So that's where we came from. The Wavenet sort of portfolio has always been in the sort of the networking and connectivity phase in terms of products in the unified communications world. And obviously we are kind of branching into sort of the technology services and security and compliance as well. So, we have a real passion for delivering that sort of disruptive and innovative technology. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. What I want to do next is just kind of touch on a few sort of slides about Teams as a core product, where it is today and some of the changes that we're seeing. And then what I will do is kind of branch into a bit of a live demonstration on the backend portal and our actual Teams Link product. So what I want to start with is just talking about a little bit about sort of where the traditional world of an approach to sort of IT was. So, this kind of encapsulates both the problem and the opportunity we are dealing with in the IT world. So, the fact that people are able to access any application from any device from any location, this is what you're seeing in kind of the traditional approach to IT versus kind of where we are today. This is the security versus productivity dilemma. What we're seeing is, we have users needing the ability to work effectively regardless of the device they're using, regardless of the location they are working from, regardless of the application they are using. Microsoft have quoted, this is a Microsoft slide, by the way, Microsoft have recently quoted that they have seen 2 years of digital transformation in the last sort of 2-3 months. Obviously, I don't think obviously even they themselves predicted a global pandemic and where we are with that today, but they have seen that huge, as have we as an organization, this huge, massive gap that needs to be filled and taking organizations to the ability to work effectively and access all these things you're seeing remotely. So, Teams is intended to solve some of these issues, in particular being productive from anywhere and also allowing you to manage both the Microsoft 365 apps and third-party apps in one place. And that's a really, really key point there. So, Teams is everywhere, obviously. What you are actually seeing now in the Microsoft space, what you didn't see previously is, they're advertising it all over the place in the consumer space, in the business space. That's not something they've done previously with their communications product. This is even before the crisis hit, Microsoft were already heavily investing in pushing Teams and seeing that massive growth. And that's because Teams is a platform. I wanted to just highlight a little bit of this as well, because you are actually seeing Teams for Education in the news quite a lot at the moment. So we are actually seeing a lot of organizations, which is why we put this together today, in the education sector having that need to obviously engage, interact and collaborate with all various different individuals all around the world, all over the country and in all various different circumstances. So, you are seeing, places like China, as an example, has seen a 500% increase in Teams meetings, calls and conferences since January 31st. 12 million users were added in 1 week. So we're seeing like, a huge shift. Even the House of Lords have been told to familiarize themselves with Microsoft Teams as a product. So it is everywhere and it is becoming very, very predominant. So why Teams? So Teams combines all of these into a single, centralized, combined and collaborative hub. This allows different generations to use their favorite communication and collaboration methods without providing different solutions for each. So the nice thing is you do have that centralized file shared, removes disjointed collaboration, everything's there for you. Mobile and home workers use the same applications as office-based employees. Everyone's on that single source platform and you can access all various platforms, even non-Microsoft related platforms, through your Teams environment. So a little bit about sort of, why Teams and some of the things you're seeing. So, what you're also seeing a lot of at the moment is kind of Zoom or Cisco WebEx also being widely pushed. So WebEx is well established in the corporate world. And at the end of the day, it is primarily a video solutions, as is Zoom. The difference with Microsoft Teams is not just a conference facility, it's an entire platform. As you'll see when we run through the session, it includes things like document collaboration, chat, telephony, apps, calendar and inbox, all the integration with Microsoft itself. So it is that full collaboration tool. It's a full platform. It's part of Office 365, which is nice. One of the big and nice pushes as well is, there's education discounts from Microsoft in that sector on licensing. So Teams is natively built into Office 365, allowing, those discounts and you have these tools at your disposal very easily, as well as single sign-on. Previously in many organizations, that was a difficult task, and it even still is now. You have multiple applications to sign into. Within the team space and the collaborative tool space, it's in your Office 365 tenancy. That one single sign-on element signs you into all your Microsoft applications, allows you access to Teams, and allows you access to all the collaboration tools that Teams bring. So what is Microsoft Teams essentially? So Teams is a chat-based workspace that brings together chat, meetings, calling, and Office 365 all in one. It's obviously built on the trust of Microsoft security and compliance, and that's crucial for business today. So you do have the ability to do persistent chat, as you would expect. So you have the ability to interact and work with your entire workforce and decide how you want to meet with them and converse and collaborate with people. So we, in our sort of world, we call Teams and a lot of UCaaS products what's called a presence-based product. It means you can physically see people's availability. You can physically see certain locations. You can see whatever information people make relevant. You have integration with your Outlook calendar if you're in a meeting and that sort of thing. So people in your organization have the ability to choose the most effective way to communicate with you. You know, if you're in a meeting, you know, calling someone's not the most effective way. You know, you have the ability to have chat, engage in video conferences, drag other people in, collaborate on documents that all exist in one particular platform. So you obviously have the ability to do powerful online meetings like we're doing currently. You know, you have that ability, that conference facility built in, and you have that existing. You do have, obviously, enterprise calling and voice. That's the element we're really going to touch on today, as well as having things like built-in Office 365 applications. And of course, obviously, as I already mentioned, that's built with enterprise-grade security and compliance through Microsoft, as you would expect. So again, going back to that all-in-one communication element, so you can transform how work gets done by unifying calling, chat, meetings, calendar, and email. That's effectively what Team is and how Teams works. So, you know, you get everything that you need in one suite. Now, I did mention previously things like Cisco WebEx and Zoom. When I mentioned about Teams being a platform, it is exactly that. So Teams obviously has the ability to add all these external things, bots and applications into Teams, meaning you can actually join Zoom meetings or Cisco WebEx meetings from your Teams application. So it is that one platform, and it still allows you all that collaboration, but not just in the Microsoft space. You know, one of the other big things we're seeing, and the nice thing is, in particular in, you know, education and various different sectors, is the people, the end users that are joining these meetings don't necessarily have to use Microsoft Teams either. You know, when you're sending out a Teams invite, there is a web-based application that they can join and view everything, have the exact same experience that you have as a user joining a Teams meeting. They get that without physically having the product. So they can do that by dialing into the web-based application, which is really fantastic and a really, really nice way to work. So, you know, Business Voice does create, you know, a full meeting solution with the addition of audio conferencing. You can give meeting to attendees, the flexibility to join meetings through Teams or by calling into a dial-in number. So there is that facility as well. Obviously, if you're hosting conferences and people don't have access to a PC, as an example, you know, there is obviously dial-in functionality into those as well. So you get calling and meetings are not only built into a single application, they're also integrated with Outlook and the Office apps, which is huge. So your contacts and your calendar are automatically synced across the Teams and Outlook, so you'll never miss anything. So this means you can make a call, schedule and join meetings right from Teams and Outlook both. Within the context of calls and meets, you can create, share and collaborate in all your standard sort of Microsoft products, your Word, your Excel and your PowerPoint. So you have all that available. One of the elements we're really trying to focus on today, though, is sort of Wavenet's core product and what our Teams Link product is. So Teams Link as a core product is the ability to take the internal collaboration you get with Teams and bring that to the external world. So it enables external voice calling from within your Microsoft Teams client securely and efficiently with our Teams Link product. So to cover off the very first point, some people might be wondering, oh, is this a different product? Is this a bolt-on to Teams? No, this is, you know, we are a direct routing supplier. We are certified by Microsoft. So you're using your Teams tenancy, your existing sign-in elements currently. The only addition that we're making is we're enabling that call tab in Teams, and we're taking all the benefits of that internal collaboration and moving that to the external world. So you do get the features that we offer. So it is, like I said, a Microsoft approved solution. We do use Microsoft certified hardware. We do have a simple per user pricing. We'll touch on kind of the minutes and those sorts of things in the next bit. But, you know, we are seeing a lot of customers, a lot of Nviron customers as well, seeing cost savings on calls. It's very, very simple setup and easy to manage. And I will touch on some of that in some of the next slides next. So just to cover off, so just for anybody's sort of knowledge base, so Teams is available on a widespread amount of devices. Every user that's using Microsoft Teams can have what's called 8 instances of the application running simultaneously. So if you're a remote worker like myself, you might want to have the Teams application on your mobile device and on your desktop as well, enabling me to have that full collaboration experience. When I'm out and about, my Teams environment on my mobile is the exact same experience that I'm seeing on my desktop as well. So Teams is available on desktops, your standard Mac OS, your mobile devices and tablets. You can access it just from a web link as well. And then, of course, obviously on your mobile devices, which kind of covers off your iPhone and your Android, and is supported by most of the major web browsers, obviously Chrome and Edge and Safari, etc. So it is you are widely covered on any of the major devices that exist. So for any of those that might want to look at some of the more traditional elements as well, there are a lot of various devices for Teams. And, the nice thing about Teams as a product is it does have that flexibility to be able to work with any sort of individual user requirements. If you are a user that likes the traditional desk phone element, you can have that. If you want to have a PC with a headset like I'm using currently, you can have that. If you have a huddle room, if you have a small conference room, if you're a remote worker, if you're out on the road, there's obviously options and devices that can support every avenue and facet of how you want to work. So there's, Microsoft has a great and growing list of partners that are expanding the portfolio of Teams certified devices. There's constantly new devices coming to market. As you can see on the right hand side, we cover a whole suite of meeting room devices as well. You can have that full collaboration experience transition into your conference rooms with very simple join meeting now buttons and all kinds of various different collaboration kits and tools. So you're not just taking this from the individual user experience, it can be done on a collaborative group level as well. So you have all those options available to you. Before I sort of jump into the kind of the next bit, which is a bit of a sort of a live demo on the back end, I wanted to just touch on a few bits of kind of the Teams Link product versus Microsoft directly. Now, before anybody kind of gets scared about that, like I said, we're not taking anything away from Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is still built and hosted in Microsoft's infrastructure. We're not taking anything away from that. Our primary focus is on the telephony side, the back end, your phone system options, things that in truth, Microsoft don't specialize in, nor do they kind of really want to. Even for Microsoft to deliver voice through Teams themselves, they rely on, tier 1 providers in different countries in the world to actually deliver that for them. They don't actually run that network infrastructure. So they rely on, obviously, tier 1 partners to deliver that for them. So this is where we kind of come in, and everything we do, like I said, is very much on the back end of Teams. You're using your Teams client as normal, and everything we do is back end. So just covering a few of the sort of points there. In particular for UK-based users, the way we tariff and the way we work our product is it is unlimited UK minutes versus the traditional sort of column plan with Microsoft, which is 1,200 minutes. We of course do support any number porting. So if you are using an existing system currently, we can obviously look to port those numbers in for you. So that's completely supported. We obviously support any new UK DDIs. We can support that. A big massive difference between our product and kind of the Microsoft core product is obviously, as we are that telephony provider and that telephony focus, we actually can provide local DDIs and international DDIs in 127 countries versus Microsoft's current 12. Obviously, we have that infrastructure set up. We have data breakout points in America, Singapore, Australia, Europe. And the reason we do that is because we can provide those local DDIs and we can actually have breakout points to prevent what's called latency in other parts of the world. If I had a user based in Australia, I wouldn't want them to make an outbound call, have that route back through the UK, out from the UK back to Australia. Now, we have data breakout points to cover various different locations of the world. So that user would break out of Australia and have a local call within Australia. So it wouldn't have to come back to the UK. So these are kind of the big advantages we have. And I'll touch on a second about the sort of the redundancy of how that works. So both solutions have a lot of the standard features you'd expect, things like ring groups, follow the sun routing, auto attendance, music on hold, kind of standard stuff, call queues, One of the things we have, and I'm going to show that in a second, is our visual routing manager. So for any organizations that actually need to manage the telephony solution themselves, I will show you how much more simplistic that is with our platform. We do have advanced disaster recovery. So as I mentioned, Microsoft's product Business Voice relies heavily on a tier 1 carrier. The way our solution works is we host that in our data centers around the world. We run what's called a multi-tenanted environment. So on site for any organization, there's no hardware required for our solution. There's absolutely nothing you need but access to an internet connection. We can, of course, for larger organizations or various different types of organizations, between us and Nviron, we can work with you to make sure your network is stable and support and secure for any of the sort of external traffic and make sure that, voice traffic is prioritized. We can work with you on that point, but there's nothing that you need on site. We do all the work for you. We host the infrastructure for you. And one of the reasons we do that is because we operate what's called a multi-tenanted environment, and that's aggregated across a whole bunch of various different SIP channels, and that aggregation allows us a few additional benefits. So as I mentioned, going back to the sort of the tier 1 carrier scenario, if Microsoft's tier 1 carrier in the UK went down, then obviously you have that entire infrastructure kind of collapse. Now, I appreciate they have some redundancy built in, as you would expect, but we've seen tier 1 carriers go down across the UK and across the world on different instances. What we have in our solution is we're not just delivering everything over one tier 1 carrier. As an example, in the UK, we partner with 7+ major tier 1 providers, meaning if one goes down, because we have that multi-tenanted environment with the aggregation across numerous SIP channels, it means we can take that traffic and put it down any one of those other tier one providers that we have. So we don't have any impact. There was a major tier 1 carrier that had a massive outage in November. That is one of the carriers we use, but our platform was not impacted whatsoever because we were able to take that traffic and put it down other carriers. So we control that. We have a really, really nice advanced DR solution built into the platform. What that also allows us to do, and one of the huge differences between our platform and the Microsoft platform, is for any of that sort of international dial and external dial, because we have the ability to put traffic down different providers, it means we can provide a low-cost routing platform as well, which means we can kind of bespoke the best sort of rates for international dial versus just a very standard rate card that you get from Microsoft. So we do have the ability to do a lot of that. We also do have things like skill-based routing built into the platform, and I'm going to cover that off in a moment, as well as, this sounds very simplistic, but as well as group voicemail. So one of the biggest complications that a lot of organizations are coming up against with deploying teams is if any users are part of a ring group, as an example, if nobody answers the phone on that ring group, if you have voicemail turned on, a call terminates on an individual user's voicemail. And at the moment, there's no way around that. We as a solution offer a group voicemail option, meaning that can terminate on a group voicemail. If you had a sales team or an accounts team, if nobody answers the phone, that terminates on a group voicemail rather than an individual user's voicemail, because there's no way to determine what individual user's voicemail that's going to hit. It all depends on a whole lot of various different instances. So you have that. With the group voicemail option, you have the ability to then obviously just set that call route so it terminates on a group voicemail, and every user that's part of that voicemail group then gets access to that recording, so you're not missing calls, and it's very, very finite and sorted there. So what you also have with our solution as well, and a big differentiator, is we do actually offer what's called MiFID II compliant and FCA compliant call recording built into our solution. This is not available from Microsoft directly, so for any organizations that want to actually capture the call data of the organization, you can do that. Now, you will also see, because I mentioned previously our very much sort of direct partnership with Microsoft, how we work with them and how we develop our solution alongside them, what you'll also get is there's a lot of direct routing suppliers out there that can call record on Teams, but a lot of them are capturing just the PSTN activity. So anything internal and external outside of Teams. Because we develop our solution alongside Microsoft's policy APIs, it means we're also capturing internal Teams to Teams traffic. So we are capturing the internal calls that take place from Teams to Teams, which is why we can actually say our solution is MiFID II and FCA compliant. We are also waiting for the next phase of Microsoft's policy API to launch, which means we'll also go back to where we were in the Skype world of also capturing that instant messaging traffic between teams to teams users, which is a huge advantage. It means that you're fully GDPR, FCA, MiFID II compliant with our solution, which is a big one. We do have some supervisor licenses and wallboards and dashboards as well for any of those users that might have some more basic contact center requirements. You do have some of those options within our platform now.
So a question has come in, Mike.
Yeah.
So someone's asked, can you email voicemails? That's all.
Yeah, so actually voicemail to email is actually a standard feature of Teams. So you can get that with, obviously, our group voicemail option gives you that option as well. But for individual users that aren't part of a ring group, voicemail to email actually exists. There is actually a transcription. I'll be honest and say the transcription isn't always accurate as you would expect. But if somebody does leave you a voicemail, not only do you get the notification in Teams that they've done that, and in Teams it gives you the option to either listen to the audio recording or view the transcription, but you also get a copy of that in Outlook as well, meaning you could forward it to someone. You can obviously read the transcription if you're on a train or something, or you can listen to the audio recording as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's not a problem, and that's completely covered. And the addition to our product is you actually get that transition across the group as well, should you require it. That good? Perfect. All right. So what I want to do now is just actually kind of break into some of the sort of the back end elements of the product, just to kind of walk any users through the administration bit of our platform and how it works, and highlight some of those differences. So on the first point, like I've already mentioned, you have the ability to view and make calls outside of Teams. Nothing is going to change in Microsoft Teams at all. You just have the ability to actually have a dial pad in Teams now. You can dial external numbers. There is things like CRM integration as an example as well, so you do get click to dial, but you simply have the ability to take your Teams client and dial externally. This is the only addition that gets made to your actual Teams tenancy. What this also allows you to do is, as I mentioned, a presence-based product Microsoft Teams is. So, anybody in my organization can see at the moment that I'm presenting. You can obviously see the different tabs of people's availability. I can set a status message, but the big key difference as well is you do have the ability to control some of your own and individual call traffic. So unlike traditional PBX solutions where people have, extension numbers as an example, with a product like Microsoft Teams and most UCaaS products, you have the ability to, obviously every single user has a DDI. Now, don't panic about that. I know some organizations don't like that, but through the portal, I'll show you how you can mask the outbound CLI, so you never have to present that DDI should you not want to, but you can control your own sort of call routing traffic. So if someone calls my DDI, I can choose to have that ring me also at other places as well. So I could put my mobile number in there if I wasn't signed into the application. I could have it ring no one else, or I can actually set that to ring a call group. So I'm part of obviously a channel team. So if I wanted my calls to ring, my DDI as well as my team, I could set that if we were, really conscious that we didn't want calls to be missed. You can choose where you want calls to go if they are unanswered. You can forward your calls as well as also ringing you to, again, a very similar element. I can forward them directly to a voicemail, to my mobile number, to anybody else's number, or to a specific group of individuals. So everybody has the ability to control their own DDI routing, which is massively valuable in this, especially in the situation we're in currently. So for any of those organizations that had people, in an office or in a school or what have you, and all of a sudden you had to take that all to the external world through, obviously, the ability to route your own DDI traffic through here, and as well as our portal, which I'll show you in a moment, you can see how very simplistic and how easy that was to transition across. So it's very, very easy that. And this is the Teams client that you'll see, and obviously you just have the ability to dial obviously any numbers that you want, as well as set things like speed dials and new groups, etc., etc.
So a question here, Mike, that's just come through. I'll just publish that. So basically, can you pause a call recording when taking card details, for example?
Yes, so we do have, I'll touch on that in a moment, but actually within our contact center, there is an agent dashboard which does have pause resume recording. So if you do have recording turned on, there is the ability to actually, pause a recording, take card details. You can have it set for an automated amount of time to come back up. You can set a delay for 30 seconds or what have you, or you can obviously resume it manually. So that is a feature that does exist within our contact center environment for an agent-based recording. So yeah, absolutely, that's not a problem.
Fantastic. And what about reporting? So in a call center, to display dashboard of call stats and daily reports.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, what I'm going to do is perfect timing to sort of bring across our portal, and I'll start walking through some of those features. Some of which obviously this covers off some of the basic contact center elements, and some of the reporting that exists. The nice thing as well, though, is I'll touch on our platform again, because we are that call routing provider. We also have things like, you can get sort of live API links and live data links, so you can actually put your data into things like PowerBI, which is Microsoft's analytical tool, and get really in depth. But of course, natively, there's some elements built into the portal as well that make it far easier to extract from our portal than it is within Microsoft's base environment. So if let me just quickly set a bit of a demo here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up the portal here. So this is the back-end functionality. Like I said, not every user is typically going to see the back-end portal. The people that see this are going to be your people that administer your actual phone system solution. So this is just the advantage of showing these people how this works and the benefits this brings. So as mentioned, as a starting point, the way we tariff is kind of unlimited domestic calls. So for anything international and premium rate numbers, you can see obviously your call charge stats. So whenever you log into the portal, it will pull up sort of where you are month to date, so you can keep track of that. You can obviously raise and view any support tickets that are needed. You can also check and track the operational health of the solution on here. So what you'll see is obviously, as I mentioned, we have a global infrastructure, so you can actually check. I can check the Sydney data center as an example, and I can see what's operational, as well as any past incidences. So, not normally needed, but you can obviously check and view the operational health of the solution, should that be relevant. So a few things I want to cover off here, and what I want to do is I'll do this as quick as possible, but I want to just highlight some of the differences in our solution versus Microsoft directly, and some of the simplistic elements. One of the first is the activity tab. So we have a lot of organizations that might need this for any sort of internal, potential, HR purposes, people management purposes, or maybe a GDPR compliance purpose. This gives you a really quick snapshot of the activity that's taking place in the organization. This is a little bit more complex in the Microsoft environment and sometimes requires a bit of PowerShell. Now, what you can see here is call stats. You can see obviously the date, the time, the user to and from, the number to and from. You can see all of that information here. I mentioned that we're developing alongside Microsoft's policy API. So previously in our Skype for Business world, we were also able to capture in here instant messages as well as document transfers, and document transfers was key. By year's end, we should hopefully have that integrated in the Teams platform as well, which means you can also see if anybody's transferring documents outside the organization and setting those policies within the portal as well, which is really, really valuable and really easy. And again, a little bit more complex in the Microsoft arena. So you just have a very quick snapshot view, an endless scroll, various date ranges where you can just check the activity. You can export that information into things like a data query. You can also track it not for just peer-to-peer activity, but for any conferences in the organization as well. So you can track all of that. In the setup tab, this is where it hosts most of the elements you would expect to see in a traditional phone system. And I'll lay some of these out for you in the simplistic fashion that exists. So certain things like, a blocked callers tab. So you can obviously set block callers. You can set user access and security groups. So you can restrict certain users from seeing certain elements in the portal. Perhaps you have a manager or something that needs to run reports on certain elements. You can obviously restrict access from other users, really simplistically. You can set things like the dial policies for individuals and the organization. If you want to restrict users calling certain locations, you can do that very simplistically. And you can manage everything from here. You can manage your users. You can manage your media. So for any of your auto attendants, your IVRs, any of those sorts of things, you can actually see those and upload them into the portal in an audio, WAV, MP3 format. So you can control all of these on your own call route. So you have that very, very simplistically. You can manage your voicemails and your group voicemails. So you can create group voicemails here. Like I mentioned before, it's really simplistic to do that and really easy. But you can also create users very, very simplistically. So one of the nice things is when you create a user in your Office 365 tenancy, you can set up an Active Directory sync so it pulls across to the portal, or you can simply, if I just started creating a user for myself, very manually, very easy, you select the domain that user is going to be associated to, you assign them the particular license that they need, you select a number from the available numbers, and you can add them to contact center if you need. You can fill in the relevant information, add their emails, whatever you need to do, but it's just very, very quick and easy to set up a new user with external dialing capabilities. And you can do this from anywhere, which is really, really nice. Ties into your tenancy and just creates that user, obviously the instant ability to then be able to dial externally out of Microsoft Teams, which is fantastic and very, very simplistic. So very, very easy to do through the portal. I did mention the ability to do things like mask and outbound CLI. Through the mask and the outbound CLI tab, this is where you can actually create outbound CLIs. So it gives you the ability to, like I mentioned, every user has a DDI, but when they make outbound calls, you might not want them to present that DDI. So you have the ability to create and control the DDIs that are presented when somebody's making an external call. So I myself manage the channel within the UK, but also for Australia as well. So I have an Australian CLI that I can present when I'm making calls in Australia. So I'm not presenting a UK number. So you have that ability, and that kind of touches the sort of the global elements as well, because you can obviously have users that have, you know, numbers for different locations in the world, and you can change in the portal the numbers that they present when they're making outbound calls, which is really handy and really, really, really nice. What I want to touch on as well is I mentioned, and this is a key feature of our product, is the Visual Call Routing Manager. So what you're seeing here, this is a demo one, and I'll show you how to do this in a moment. Is it's a really simplistic view of a call route. Even, you know, the most sort of untechnical of people can kind of get a grasp of how this works. You know, if somebody calls this number, if it's in hours, you know, it has a time condition on it. So as an example, this is weekday. So Monday to Friday between 7 to 6, your calls route in this direction. They hit, you know, a main menu IVR, so, you know, welcome to, as an example, press 1 for sales, press 2 for support. Support hits another IVR, you know, press 1 for, you know, standard support, press 2 for provisioning. You can kind of just see how very easy it is and very visual it is to set up your call routes. And this is a big one for a lot of organizations deploying Teams telephony. This is a little bit more complex in the Microsoft arena and a little bit more restrictive because we are that sort of total communications and telephony specialist. You know, we've kind of designed this with that in mind and how easy it is for organizations to do this. And it is as simple as when you go in to create a call route, you select the DDI for your organization that you want to select a call route for. You can name this call route, and it is just a simple click-through process to start building. So this covers 2 elements as well. A nice thing about this as well is it also covers your disaster recovery. So we have a lot of customers that set templates for disaster recovery scenarios. You know, the situation we're in now is an exact example of that. Any of our customers were not impacted by COVID-19 in the way that they functioned and communicated as an organization. They might have had to go in here and change some call routes to stop things going to, you know, a receptionist in an office or what have you. But every single one of our customers, Nviron's customers, had the ability to make these changes and instantly change their call routes and route things to people wherever they were, as well as the ability to monitor that. You can also set these templates for things like, you know, public holidays or any of that sort of scenario, but it just gives you a really nice advantage to build these and have them ready and set. And it is as simple as just going through a click-through process. So I mentioned that time condition, that might be the first thing you want to start. So, between particular hours, you can name that time condition. You can set criteria for specific holidays, like I mentioned. So you have the ability to just add in any of those as a time condition. You can then just click through, add things like your announcements, your IVRs, press 1 for, press 2 for. All of that is just as simple as this. I showed you how to upload the recording tab the other day. So you have just obviously all the various different recordings. You can choose one and just add that to the call route that you want. So there was one particular element that I mentioned previously, and that was the difference between a call group and a ring group and a call queue. So I highlighted one element that we have in our product that's different to Microsoft as well. A ring group, when you add that to a call queue, is simply exactly what it says. If I added this ring group to this call route, you can set the ring time for 20 seconds. It means it's going to ring all the people in this ring group at the same time for 20 seconds. Whoever picks up the call picks up the call. That's what Microsoft have built into their platform as well. So you have the ability to do that. But what we also have in our product, in our Teams Link Pro product, is the ability for a call queue. Now, what a call queue is what's called skill-based routing. So you have the ability to rank agents from sort of 0 to 100. The higher the ranking on the agent, they take the calls first, essentially. We have what's called a smart agent selection backend. So if you have a whole bunch of people on the same skill level, it'll route to the person that's been most idle the longest. But this is a huge feature for us, for organizations, even ourselves, Nviron, for their service desks, as an example, we all use the call queue and skill-based routing functionality. So you can choose which calls you want to go to certain individuals first before it works sequentially downwards. So you have those abilities to add, and that's a huge function and a massively advantageous feature. Now, people, there's been some mention of reporting as well. So through the portal, there's some sort of standard reports that you can run. Things like, call summaries, outbound call detail records. But in the contact center element, this is where you can get some of the more bespoke elements as well. So I mentioned we do have basic contact center functionality, one of which is an agent dashboard, which just gives the agent the view of the call they're connected to. But in the agent dashboard, that's when you have the ability to pause and resume recording. We also have things like active supervisor dashboards. So you can actually see, you can choose the call queue you want to actively manage. So, as a home user, as an example, I can monitor the calls from my team. Any calls that come in will obviously highlight on the left, the right-hand side, tell you what call queue they're a part of. And obviously, you can watch that sequentially work to the specific agents. So I, as a supervisor, can do things like, log somebody out, as an example. I can start a break for them. I can set them to busy so that obviously calls don't route to them. So you have the ability to control all of that, few different groups, set up everything you want. So specific users can have visibility of their team and their call traffic. You can also monitor that by things like, we do have live and active wallboards with customizable KPIs. So, this one's got a lot of the standard things you'd expect to see. Again, I could look at specific queues if I wanted. I can see, the available amount of agents, the calls answered, not answered percentages. You can change this to numerical percentages, calls abandoned, active calls, queued calls. In particular, some of the stats you'd expect to see: average answer time and longest call waiting time and stuff like that as well. So you have the ability to view all of that. But through the contact center is where you also can view a lot of the various different reports. So not only on a particular user, but you can also view it on like a particular queue should you want to. So if you do actually want to have a particular queue that you want to view detail on, you can do that. This is quite an important one for a lot of organizations as well. So this will just give you a summary of specific things like your average wait time, your average handle time, your average wrap-up time, but on specific queues. So if you want to track specific elements of information, you can do that. And you can do the exact same for your particular agents and, of course, a global summary as well and a call summary. So you have the ability to do all of that, as well as one of the tabs here as well is CRM integration. So what that means as a core product is, we can integrate with CRM solutions. What that gives you the ability to do is click to dial from your CRM, as well as it will pull contact records for incoming calls. So for anyone that's used Teams, when a call comes in, if you're using like a desktop as an example, you get a notification in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But what this will also do is it'll pull those records from the CRM, so it will tell you who the user is that's calling in. So you have those abilities there to monitor that. As well as I mentioned, we do have the ability to view and store call recordings, which you will see here. This actually just pulls up everything you'd expect to see in terms of call recording. Again, you can set all your different user access levels, and not everybody needs to have access to this, but you can see this. You can search from and to particular users. You can search by numbers. You can obviously set date ranges. There's all different elements. You can simply click play to start playing recordings and seeing how those work visually. You have the ability to, copy the URL, send that particular element to particular users should you want to. You can export all the various different elements of metadata. There's all kinds of things you can do in the back end. There's transcription services available to transcribe your recordings. Then that way you can search by text. There's all kinds of various elements that you can do here. And of course, obviously, we can explore some of that in a different session, or if anybody has any of those questions sort of in the back end. I'm just obviously conscious of time. So I just want to keep things moving forward, if that's all right. But that covers...
Mike, from Alex. So you're just asking, basically, can you do skills-based routing between different tenants or geographic locations?
You can, yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, a call route or a call queue is based on obviously the number. So whatever number is inputted, obviously you can even set your call queues or your call routes to go to external numbers as well. So you can have things route to a mobile number should you need to. So yeah, through our platform, you have the ability to control all of that. So absolutely, that's not a problem.
Great stuff. Okay, and Alex has also followed up asking about the control over the ring time for each user. Yeah.
What can you customize that?
Yeah, and how calls, how it hunts between users, etc.
Yeah, you can customize the amount of time. There's all various different sort of delays that you can set: 5 seconds, 10 seconds, what have you. In terms of how it selects the agents, that's all done by the smart agent selection element, and that'll relate to their status as well in the contact center environment. So if you have a whole bunch of users in obviously one particular call queue, if 2 people are on the phone but they're the highest ranked agents, it'll start to work sequentially downwards. So it all depends on obviously your agent rating and your agent selection ranking and how you set that up. But yeah, that's all completely customizable, so no problem.
Great stuff. Okay, there was a question from Vince about call costs, and in his specific in his specific example, he calls mobile phones probably 80% of the time, calling home, to parents and stuff like that. So what would the cost be calling mobile phones?
So yeah, like I said, it entirely depends. In the UK, as an example, like I mentioned, our tariffs are unlimited domestic. So for mobiles, that obviously is subject to fair usage, which means essentially 2,000 minutes to mobiles. But within the UK, those tariffs are set, and then it just depends on sort of if you're in obviously different countries. But if you're talking UK specific, then predominantly your call costs will be wrapped up in the tariff, unless you're going over obviously 2,000 minutes to mobiles. And if you do, then it's subject to obviously just a standard rate card in which we'd send with you. We're kind of touching back to my earlier point as well about how we can do things like low cost routing. That's the nice thing about our solution, is we can work with you as a telephony provider and customize specific rate cards for whatever it is that you need. But out of the box, the solution and how it's tariffed is unlimited domestic calls. So yeah, you should be more than covered there. It makes a very easy sort of cost per user model setup when you're talking about how you want to deploy this. And again, in particular within the education sector as well, and the discounts that Microsoft give on some of the licensing and stuff, it works really, really nicely. So yeah, that's that. Hopefully that covers that.
Fantastic.
Perfect. So yeah, just moving on here. So I've kind of covered off the back end of the portal. Again, I'm just, like I said, I'm conscious of time, so I just want to kind of keep moving things forwards. A big key to sort of Teams and our core product as well is, there is constant innovation on it. So the platform I've just showed you, that's been owned and operated by us for the the entire existence of the organization. And like I said, that kind of started traditionally with your Microsoft Communicator product, to your Link product, to your Skype for Business, and now to Teams. We're constantly evolving alongside Microsoft. We have developers on staff that are constantly making changes, aligning our product with Microsoft's product. So you're constantly, in the most up-to-date solution that you have. So this is some of obviously the standard things that Microsoft have brought out. Live captions and subtitles is a huge one that's being used across the education sector currently. They have obviously increased the custom background as well. We obviously provide call recording in our solution. And this is just, this next slide very much highlights, just since March, since in particular sort of COVID's happened, you've seen a lot of, things that Microsoft have delivered really, really quickly, things they didn't expect to deliver, so quickly. And you can see just the ones that are kind of, crossed out there is how quickly they've made these innovations. So, their commitment and our commitment is that we're constantly evolving this product and constantly there to sort of support your infrastructure, as well as, any sort of IT requirements as well. Like I mentioned, kind of conscious of time, so I'm just going to pass back to Sam for a moment and look to wrap things up.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. I do appreciate it. Thanks everyone for taking part as well. So what we'll do is from now we'll send you a follow-up email after the call. Obviously, don't hesitate to obviously ask any questions you got now, or we can catch up after the call as discussed. So Mike, yeah, over to you to explain the offer that we've got for everyone who's attended today.
Yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
Run through that.
Yeah, perfect. So after this, we will open things up to sort of any questions. If anybody does have any, I appreciate you might not want to do this now, but you are obviously welcome to get in touch with, the guys at Nviron or myself directly, should you need to. And obviously we can answer any questions for you. So feel free, if you've got some sort of brewing, to sort of start getting those in the chat. But we are offering, and this is quite an aggressive offer, to anybody that's kind of attended today. We are offering, of course, you can obviously trial the product should you need to as well. But if you did join the webinar, you are looking and interested in Teams telephony, we are offering 2 months free with a 12-month contract, since you attended today's session, or 3 months free and no setup charge with a 36-month contract. Obviously that is sort of exclusive to anyone that's kind of attended today, and we are hoping to have those signed up before the 31st of August. But yeah, so quite a nice aggressive offer there, something that can save you a little bit of time and productivity and cost. So hopefully you can use that. Next bit would just be if there are any questions. So if anybody does have anything, now would definitely be the time. If not, then we'll just kind of conclude the session if anything comes in.
Yeah, we do have a question. So it's just to explain, Mike, where or how you pick up and answer other people's calls.
So there's multiple ways to do that, obviously. So is that if that's specifically from another individual's DDI, there's 2 ways to do that, obviously. If you actually had a call route set in the portal that they didn't answer and that routed to you as a user, that could be done. Or, as I showed previously, the ability of a particular user to then forward their DDI to someone specific. So if I pulled my Teams client back across as an example, that's when you can use this element as well. So you might not want that always as a function turned on, but through the settings tab here was essentially how you did that. So I could have my calls, there was 2 options, not just forward but calls ring me, if I put in here a particular user. So that's a new number or a contact. I can allocate a particular contact. So if I had somebody in my contact list that I want the calls to ring me and them, and then it's whoever picks it up, you have that option. Or you can just forward to them if you're going to be out of the office, as an example. Or if you want it just kind of turned on all the time, you could just set that as a call route in the portal, through the visual call routing manager that I showed you. And I think that kind of leans to sort of the flexibility of the product, is just all those things can be done and set automated and permanent, or you have the flexibility to do that kind of on demand. So, myself, when I go on annual leave, as an example, I just forward my calls to, someone someone else in my team as an example, but typically I want those calls to route to me and I just make that change myself manually. So there's both options.
Obviously, you don't need a physical handset to manage all that, do you? It's kind of irrelevant, I suppose, with it being.
Yeah, I mean, it's an option if you want it. Like I said, every user can have 8 instances of the application. So if you want that as an option, it is there, or you don't have to use that. It's entirely down to you. Do we have any other questions? Does that conclude?
I think that's it.
Perfect. Well, yeah, hopefully that was beneficial, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today. And as Sam mentioned, there will be sort of a follow-up email as well. There will be access to the recording or any further questions. Feel free to get in touch with us. And from me, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mike. All the best.